So one of the things that happens when you hear about these teachings that's pretty much inevitable is the you that hears this, the you that hears these teachings and hears about suffering and the cause of suffering, and the you that hears these teachings and hears about the possibility of experiencing the natural state, which is your true nature, right? That you will then begin to seek to experience your true nature, won't it? It's inevitable. That's probably what's going on with you. That through these teachings, what you've concluded is that if I could be who I really am, if I could experience the natural state, if I could realize my true nature, then I won't suffer. Then I'll be happy, then I'll be peaceful, then I'll be satisfied. You know, that's the carrot, that's the promise, right? And therefore, people will meditate, and if they don't feel like they're succeeding in this process of realizing their true nature, they will do what the personality does whenever it doesn't seem to be getting what it wants, right? It will do more, it'll do different, or it'll do better, or it'll do less. In other words, it'll keep changing something to try and get it right, right? So if I haven't succeeded in realizing my true nature, and I believe my teacher has, then I want to aspire to realize my true nature like my teacher has. And since my teacher meditates a lot, maybe I have to meditate more. I'll do more meditation. Okay? Or maybe I have to look and see, what do I need to do less of in order to realize my true nature? Okay? Less alcohol, maybe? Less television? Less pornography? Less spending money? So the personality will keep looking at that situation that way. You know, what do I have to change? You know, I'm not getting there yet, so I'll have to keep paying attention here and look to see what adjustments to make. And in the conversations that I have with my teacher, I'll be looking for advice about what to do next. You know, what am I doing wrong, right? Or what do I have to change? Or what do I have to improve on in order to get where I'm going here? And it makes it even more difficult when we talk about this process in terms of it being a path, right? The path of Zen, the spiritual path, and so forth, right? But here's the deal. Here's the truth about that, right? The truth about that, the deal is, the one way you can guarantee, without any doubt at all, that you will never succeed in experiencing your true nature is to try to do it. The one way that you can be certain that you're not experiencing your true nature is to attempt to realize your true nature, to become enlightened, to work on it, to practice it, to develop more insights, to go to more retreats, read more books, you know, whatever it is. Do more of something, do less of something, change something. Improve yourself. See, the thing is this, if you've come to the conclusion, and by the way, you didn't come to the conclusion, it's the mental activity that comes to the conclusion. If you come to the conclusion that you're not there and therefore you have to do something or change something to get there, right? You're creating the illusion that you're not there. And that's the obstacle, right? When in fact, as Paul Hennerman says, you can't get out of something you're not in, which is the personality, right? You can't get out of something you're not in, and you can't get into something you've never been out of, which is your true nature. Right? So what this means, the conclusion that this brings us to is that you are the natural state. You've never been anything but the natural state. You can't be anything but the natural state, no matter what you think you think. No matter what the head tells you, no matter what the programming says, no matter what the voice in your head says, right? That doesn't change anything. You will always be what you are. You can't not be what you are. Okay? The mistake that happens is to take yourself to be something else. That's the mistake. It's not to become what you already are, right? It's to continue to pay attention to a program that's generating the illusion that you're something that you're not. That's the personality. That's the thought activity. That's the identity, whether it's the identity with the body or the identity with the conditioning, which is your personality, right? So as long as you're focused, as long as you're tuned into that channel will have you be your conditioning. That channel will have you be confused. That channel will have you think and feel like you're something that you're not. And that occurred when the body was born and you were indoctrinated into this society, into this culture, into this human tribe that continues to pass the mistaken identity along to the children that are born into it. And we're raised this way from being very young, where we're very impressionable, right? We're sponges for intaking information when you're a baby, right? And so this whole thing there's a whole completed mental state by the time you're 8 or 9 years old. Your brain has already completed your identity. It's a completed mental state, right? And then it will continue to verify itself through your behaviors, through your activities, because when you take yourself to be a separate self, when you take yourself to be the personality, upon taking yourself to be the personality, you become an actor. You become a doer, right? If you are separate, if you take yourself to be separate from everything else, then you will take yourself to be a doer. You will take yourself to be the action figure, as Paul Hederman says. So the thing that I want to emphasize here is that rather than to continue to allow yourself to unwittingly pursue the impossible, which is to realize what you already are, rather than to do that, right? How would you apply your insights and how would you use these practices to experience freedom? To experience freedom from the suffering that would otherwise occur when you take yourself to be something that you're not. So the practice of meditation is a practice in which we're practicing moving our attention away from that mental activity that's telling us we're something that doesn't exist, that's not real, and moving it away from that and paying attention to the body breathing. So when we're moving it away from that, we're paying attention to the body breathing, right? We're allowing ourselves to be what we always already are. And from that viewpoint, looking at the body breathing, so that from that viewpoint, you can see you're not the body because you can look at the body. You can't be something you can see. Right? So every time you do that, you're chipping away at the dream. You're chipping away at the illusion. You're chipping away at the character that's not real. So that helps to calm the mind down, because when your attention is away from that mental activity is not being engaged with, it's not being interacted with, and so it just starts to die a natural death because of that. Right? A little at a time, gradually it starts to die a natural death. So if you practice meditation consistently, every single day without fail, right, gradually the mind will get a little calmer. It'll get calm enough for you to not be overtaken by it all the time. Now that's a way of seeing that your mind's calming down. And one of the ways that is evident, I know it was for me, is that you notice that when you're angry, you know you're angry. When you're angry, you know better than to let the anger use your mouth, right? That's the mind calming down enough so that the anger doesn't have the ability to overtake you. If the anger has the ability to overtake you, as you well know, because we all have done this, right? You'll run your mouth, you'll express your emotions, you'll express a point of view that's self-righteous, and you'll suffer. Because when you do that, the person you're doing that with will do the same thing back to you, and then you'll be in conflict, right? And then you'll regret it, and then you'll be down on yourself, or then you'll have to get a divorce. You know all that shit that goes on, right? Tremendous amount of money and energy being spent, a tremendous amount of suffering occurring when that's the case. So by practicing consistently and allowing the mind to calm down, its ability to overtake you gets lessened. And anger is one of the places you can see it got lessened, okay? However, that doesn't mean that you don't have a personality, right? So the first thing to come to an understanding about through these teachings is that the personality is a program that runs in the head, and it's not alive, and it's not real, and that's not what you are, okay? That's the insight. That insight can be a conceptual insight. In other words, you can understand that that's the case. And one of the things teachers do is they generate metaphors or analogies or examples to try and show you from different angles how that is obviously the case, that you're not the personality and you're not the body. And by studying these teachings and engaging with these teachings and listening to these teachings, you can develop a conceptual understanding that you believe because it's legitimate, because it's founded in evidence, right? And so you have a conceptual understanding that you're not the personality, right? However, when that personality is activated, when that mental state is activated and that personality is running, and that personality is stimulating your nervous system, and that personality is producing thoughts that take your attention and pull you in to identifying with it, right? You will still find yourself back in the form of suffering, right? So the question becomes, what difference does it make to do these practices and to understand these teachings, right? Well, one difference that it makes, as I just said, is it helps you to calm the mind. The other difference that it makes is that it allows you to have a way of applying the teachings in real time, in real life, when the shit hits the fan. It allows you to apply the teachings in real time, in real life, when the shit hits the fan. What does that mean? It means that something happens and triggers you. Something happens and pushes your button. Something happens and activates your mental state and your emotional state. That's coming from your conditioning, okay? When that happens, either you're being that or you're being the awareness of that. You see, there's only two possibilities. You're either being the identity or you're being aware of the identity, right? And the identity, which is your personality, has been practiced much, much longer than you've been practicing the insight, hasn't it? But years, day in and day out, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you were practicing being the identity, being the personality, right? So the brain has deep grooves, deep neural patterns of that being true and that being the case, okay? So to expect that to just like disappear or to expect that to no longer have an effect on you is naive. And that's not actually what the intention of these teachings and practices is. The intention of these teachings and practices is for you to know the truth. That's called wisdom, right? And if you know the truth and you're applying the truth, then you're paying attention to the mental activity, right? To see when it goes off the rails. So when it goes off the rails, you apply the wisdom. And the wisdom is, I am not that. That's the wisdom application, right? Now, when you're applying the wisdom that says, I am not that, the fact that you see that you're not that doesn't change the fact that that is affecting your nervous system. So you could still be anxious, you could still have anger, you could still have depression, you could still have the insanity and the mental illness that human beings carry, right? Because generally speaking, and I'm saying this as a psychologist, generally speaking, humanity as a whole is suffering from being insane. Humanity as a whole is suffering from being in a psychotic state. Psychosis means that you have lost touch with reality, right? Well, if you're being something that doesn't exist, wouldn't that be losing touch with reality? Right? That's psychosis. That's no. If somebody tells you that they're George Washington, you know right away that they're psychotic, right? But if somebody tells you their actual name, you would say, oh, okay, you're normal just like me. No, but if you're not that name and you're not that personality, you're as psychotic as the person that thinks they're George Washington. It's the same thing. But the only reason that's not seen to be the case is because 8 billion of us agree that our psychosis is not psychosis. But if you think you're George Washington, that's psychosis. But the psychosis that we share is not psychosis because we're all in the same dream together. We're all believing that we're something that we're not together, so we can play this game with each other, that I am this body and you're that body. I'm this personality and you're that personality, and we'll play this game with one another. That's called the human life. So the thing that's important to understand, especially now, because at the time I'm doing this talk, it's around the holiday season, and the holiday season can be a difficult time for a lot of people. Okay? Even the people that think they're not supposed to be having a difficult time, that have the money, that have all the resources, right? That have a comfortable life, right? They can be crazier during the holidays than people that don't have those things. So it's not a question of whether you have money. It's not a question of any of those things. It's a question of the conditioning that will get stimulated and come up and play. And often during the holidays, certain things get triggered and come up and play, right? In the programming. It's an opportunity for you to apply the teaching. And if you apply the teaching, what the application of the teaching will look like is that instead of being neurotic, instead of being anxious, instead of being agitated, instead of being annoyed, right? Instead of being impatient, you can't wait to get away from your family. Instead of being all that, you're the space around it. You're the space that's in. What would you rather be, the space that your personality is in or your personality? Space. It's a no-brainer, right? So when the shit hits the fan, when you get triggered, because look, when you get triggered, the triggering has a compelling quality to it, doesn't it? When you get triggered, isn't it compelling? It's like you don't even see yourself identifying with it, and then you're totally identified with it, and you're being it, and then after you calm down, you start coming out of being it, you realize, oh shit, I did it again. I did more damage again. The most pervasive quality of the human personality is that it is a detriment. It is a detriment. It's a detriment to itself, and it's a detriment to everybody it comes into contact with. Right? It's a troublemaker. Right? It's always looking for what's wrong. Right? It's always figuring things out in terms of what shouldn't be happening and what should be happening. Right? And so it's a generator for suffering. It's a mechanism for suffering. Right? And then what do we do how do we deal with that suffering, right? We resist it, we try and change it, we try and control it, we medicate it, we distract ourselves from it, right? We do all the things that we share among ourselves to do. We watch football, we drink alcohol, we smoke pot, we look at pornography, we go to the gym a lot, try and work it out, try and get rid of this excess energy and so forth and so on, right? The last thing that we do, or the thing that people don't do, the one thing that they don't do when it comes to the neurotic mental activity that goes on for all of us, right, is to simply be with it. It doesn't even occur to people to just be with it, right? Because if you know you're not that, and you're the awareness of that, and you're unlimited, and that's limited, and that produces suffering, and when you're experiencing your true nature, experiencing peace, satisfaction, and well-being, right? Then you as what you actually are the space for the personality. And when you're being the space for the personality, the effect of the personality does not occur on you. Just like whatever happens in this room doesn't affect the space in this room. The effect of the mental state doesn't have an impact on you anymore. It's still there, and it may be uncomfortable, but it's not you. Right? And because that's the case, if you continue to practice calming the mind, and you continue to practice not letting that use your mouth, not letting that use your behavior, right? You'll gradually, slowly come out of it over time.